Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is some loudmouth on the internet with an opinion, and I'm joined with my friend Chairview. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? What's up?
Doing all right. And both of us just had the amazing pleasure of watching Joker Fally You Do, or whatever the fuck this movie's called. Joker 2 is what I'll call it. And what do you think of Joker 2, Chair?
Yep. I don't know why they made it so bad. I don't understand. Was it on purpose? Was it because the wrong type of people, incels, whatever, were fans of the movie and they didn't like that, so they wanted to discourage them, I guess. That's what it seems like to me.
Kind of. Though it could just be more simple. It could just be a director is kind of like a victim of his own success. Kind of after he gets like unexpected success on a project that no one saw coming, like no one expected the first one to make $1 billion. He kind of lets the success go to his head, and he comes up with a bunch of ridiculous ideas. But who's going to question him after? Because he hits a big hit last time, so let's let him do whatever he wants.
The interesting thing to note is every time Todd Phillips has done a sequel, it's failed.
Yet there needs to be a law passed that Todd Phillips must be forbidden from ever making sequels.
But I think the musical thing it might have been Joaquin Phoenix's idea because he's a weirdo. So,
right.
And the musical thing, it just didn't fit what was going on in the scene at the time. That's my only complaint, really. The main thing about it.
Yes. Joaquin Phoenix, he is a very good actor in certain roles, certainly, but he also sometimes tends to go for projects that don't really fit him. I think one of the best example was Ridley Scott's awful Napoleon movie from last year. Joaquin Phoenix gave an absolutely terrible performance in that movie,
where they just made it up, basically. Just like with he was in Gladiator 1. That reminds me of how they're doing Gladiator 2, and they're just basically ignoring everything and just throwing a black guy in the mix for no reason, and just it doesn't make sense to make a sequel to that movie,
And that's kind of a theme with this whole string, probably, that some movies shouldn't get sequels. I guess they looked up with this movie making $1 billion on a $55 million budget, and I guess they looked at that and just said this movie needs to make a sequel, regardless of if there's a good reason to do one or not. But the first Joker was really good, but it felt like a very good standalone movie. It was something like Taxi Driver or what have you. It felt like a good old-fashioned story of a lonely man kind of driven to madness. It didn't feel like a franchise movie that required a sequel.
In the second one, it's all courtroom stuff, and it's boring too. The way they do the courtroom stuff, it's not entertaining. And then you're like, why is Harvey Dent a 22-year-old DA already?
Yeah, shouldn't he be the same? Isn't Harvey Dent traditionally the same age as Bruce, who we saw as a 8-year-old kid in the last movie? He'd be 2 years later, so it mentions this movie said 2 years later, so he'd be 10 now. So in this continuity, Harvey Dent's more than a decade older than Bruce Wayne. What the fuck?
Yeah, there was one good joke in it. Okay, Joker told a really good joke at the end of the movie. Do you remember it? But it was really dark.
Yeah. They asked why when you leave your abusive husband, and he says beats the hell out of me.
Yeah, he's talking about his mom. He's like, why wouldn't you leave your abusive boyfriend? Beats the hell out of me.
Right.
And now, okay, so they did say that he was SA'd, but they didn't really show full on SA. So I don't know. Is it implied that he was SA'd? Because yeah, they took his clothes off in the shower or whatever, but they didn't show any penetration or anything.
Well, they can't really do that without going beyond an R rating. So it heavily implied that that the guards bunked him, which was a theme in this movie that was kind of in bad taste. It all felt like it was designed to humiliate this character, whereas the first movie, he kind of starts at rock bottom, and over the course of it, he kind of just embraces the madness and kind of in a way makes a name for himself. He develops a persona, Joker, and he kind of goes mad. He kills people, and he kind of becomes like a cult figure for the downtrodden, after like Thomas Wayne says we see you as all as clowns, and people take that and decide to like dress up in the symbol, which is kind of similar like how when the image of Winnie the Pooh was suppressed in China, Winnie the Pooh became a weird symbol of like the Hong Kong protesters. Got kind of a weird way like certain iconography will like go wild wild just due to like one person misstatement or banning something that would be better left ignored. Kind of the Streisand effect.
So I had taken notes about it, so I figure we could just go through the plot of the movie. So at the beginning, right, there's that animation sequence for some reason, and the quality of it kind of sucked. But I think in that sequence they were showing how Arthur was feeling all exposed, and that he's fighting with the Joker for control of himself, and the Joker's trying to take over. But I notice he tends to disassociate and fantasize whenever they're talking about his childhood. Like if they're talking about his mom, he'll get angrier and angrier, and then eventually just start going into some musical fantasy, right? And,
yeah, which kind of does make sense. Like it was kind of a persona that he developed in his mind to shield himself from the fact that he was horribly abused as a child, which is incredibly dark, but also very poignant because that is often the case with people with mass killers. A lot of them do have a history of abuse in their background.
When the Saints Go Marching In is in the whole movie, and that song traditionally they would sing it in New Orleans at like funerals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like foreshadowing or whatever. And then there's a fat guy at the prison that I thought might be the Penguin, but they didn't show any of that. But I'm wondering if that was meant to be some sort of reference.
I didn't catch that.
And then you see Arthur, he's not eating. He's really, really skinny. He's not telling jokes anymore. But did you notice? Okay, so Arthur goes up to get his pills. And in the background, they're talking about a guy that bit another guard, right?
Uh-huh.
But you hear the Joker laugh right before that. So the real Joker, they're hinting at it right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Well, the idea that Arthur Fleck is not the real Joker, the one who like fights Batman, but is more just the one who inspired him, is actually on paper not a bad idea. It's kind of something I suspected from the beginning.
You know what the problem is, though?
Yeah.
See, they even mentioned the fact that the so-called the real Joker, like, was already in prison 8 years before Arthur got there.
Yeah, it's a problem. I imagine the real Joker should be a lot younger, should be more like the same age as this universe's Batman. And there's an illusion at the end, like with him cutting his face, that that he's like the Heath Ledger Joker, but obviously that can't be true because there's no way that these movies fit in continuity.
Okay, so the thing about that is, in the first movie, they wanted to end the movie with Arthur cutting his face, but Christopher Nolan is the one that told them no.
And he's not at Warner Brothers anymore, so they did it this time instead.
Yeah, but the thing is at the beginning when they're shaving, did you notice that they cut his mouth right where the Glasgow smile would be?
Yeah.
So they did that at the beginning to foreshadow whatever. And then here's an interesting thing. They come outside in the rain and they're holding black umbrellas, right?
Yeah.
But then they flash to a fantasy, and in the fantasy, the colors of the umbrella match the Joker suit. And which is pretty funny. And then Arthur's lawyer puts a jacket over him, just like you remember in Batman Dark Knight. In the Dark Knight Rises or whatever, how he says sometimes a hero puts a coat around a young boy's shoulders. And so they were kind of hinting at that.
Yeah, but this movie definitely is not a prequel to The Dark Knight because we know that because there's a completely contradictory ways that Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot for one thing.
Yep. And then so then his doctor comes out and they're trying to convince Arthur to go along with the story of him having a multiple personality, but like all of his testimony in that segment would have been thrown out in a real court because the lawyer was asking leading questions the entire time. The doctors, everybody, they were like, "Oh, you have another personality, right? You know, it's this thing that's inside of you," and they were trying to convince him to go with that argument.
Probably, yeah. The prosecutor can immediately have an objection, and that would definitely be sustained.
And then you have big fat black guy playing the Saints Go Marching In on a trumpet, which I thought was interesting because Louis Armstrong had a version of that song. And then the line in the song is, "I'm going to curl up into a ball and die." There's some foreshadowing for you.
Right. But the main reason I think this movie didn't work is the first movie you kind of see Arthur take more control of his situation as the movie goes on. He kind of goes from someone who just relies on charity from either his mom or like a various government employees or his employer, and kind of like takes more control of his situation throughout it. Though it's to become a killer. Whereas here, Arthur has no role in most of the events that take place later in the movie. Like the explosion that happens at the end, it's a big shock moment, but he had no role in planning it. It's just something that just kind of happens.
Yeah, and
you don't even know anything about the guys that plan it. They're not developed as characters at all. It's just very cookie cutter storytelling.
Yep. So Harley Quinn at one point says, "I saw you on Murray's show, and I thought, I hope this guy blows his brains out." Like that could be taken either way. It could be taken that she was hoping that he would shoot Murray, or she was hoping that he would kill himself. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah. Well, he originally wanted to go on the show. He wanted to shoot himself, but he kind of over time decided to shoot Murray instead.
No, I know, but I think Harley Quinn is so messed up that she either wanted to see him kill himself because she didn't want Arthur. She only wanted this version of him, the Joker. That's the only thing she wanted, right?
Which I guess is consistent with Harley Quinn as a character. It was clear that she's a woman who's suffering from hybristophilia, and which is a disturbing real phenomenon because I just watched a recent lengthy YouTube video on the Dark Knight shooting from 2012, the Aurora shooting, and at the end of it, it talks about how James Combs got like numerous love letters from all these women, and there was like a collage of these women, and a lot of them were kind of pretty, who were sending love letters to this monster who murdered 12 people in a movie theater.
The dude didn't even say, "I'm the Joker." They just put that on him, and he never actually said that.
Yeah, I'm aware. That's a total myth that he targeted that theater because he was obsessed with the Joker. He pretty much would have targeted whatever was the hit movie that weekend. If the Avengers had been the hit movie that weekend, he would have shot up a theater with the Avengers in it.
Okay, so then one of the guards asked for Arthur, to sign a book. Did you catch the author's name on the book?
No, I don't remember. I only saw it one time.
Okay, so the book is called "The Night the Laughter Died," and it's by Gene Ufland, who I looked it up. He's the executive producer of the Murray Franklin Show.
Oh, I get it.
The guy that was at the beginning with the fro or whatever when they met him. But also, Andrew Dice Clay had a comedy album called "The Day the Laughter Died," which I thought maybe they were referencing there. And then he signs it and says, "I hope you get cancer," which is a line from King of Comedy.
Oh, it is? Yeah. There were probably a lot of few like Easter eggs in this movie I didn't catch.
And they're watching a movie. The movie is called The Bandwagon, starring Fred Astaire. And the reason why they do that, I think, is because of the tap dancing at the end.
Right. And then another thing about this movie, the box office apparently had the biggest second weekend drop of any comic book movie ever. The second weekend it made 80, like only a little over 20% what it made the first weekend. That is a massive drop from first to second weekend, and that is indicative of extremely bad word of mouth. Like most people who saw this movie in its first weekend told their friends and family not to see it.
Yeah. Oh, and in the trailer they say, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" That was in the trailer, but they don't say it in the movie.
Right.
But they do show a scene where he's dancing with Harley Quinn, and there's a full moon behind them, and that's what they're getting at.
Yeah, the musical, making this movie a musical, that whole decision, I was skeptical of it from the beginning. I thought it was a dumb idea, but I was open-minded. I'm like, maybe that could work. And having seen the final movie, it was an absolutely terrible decision. None of the musical numbers are interesting at all. They're incredibly dull and boring, and it was a slog to sit through them.
I know. It just, I don't know why they didn't pick better music or more modern music that people would know, but or even like original, make some original pieces or something.
Something. I mean, if you're gonna make this a musical, for some reason, at least like put effort. This movie supposedly had a $200 million budget, which is triple what the first movie cost. And this is like the best. It just looks like an average stage show. Well, where did all that money go?
Yeah, and like the only thing there's that explosion, and maybe Harley Quinn's maybe Lady Gaga's pay. I don't know what they got paid for this movie, but
Joaquin Phoenix got $20 million and Lady Gaga got $12 million. So that's money down the drain. But most of this movie is just set in like a courtroom or in Arkham Asylum. So there's not really even that many environments. Like a lot of time a high budget movie needs that because there's all these location shoots and they travel around the world and go all these places. But this movie doesn't have that. It pretty much is 90% of the movie is just set in those two locations. And there's like a shot of him running down the street, an explosion. Nothing in this movie comes across like some $200 million blockbuster.
And there was CGI to knit the city together, but even that wasn't that expensive.
No, not at all. I mean, keep in mind, remember, Godzilla -1 was made for only $15 million.
And I don't know why Arkham Asylum is supposed to be like Alcatraz in this movie.
Right.
Then,
there's not even like extensive makeup effects or anything because there's no like really out there Batman villains like Killer Croc or Clayface or something. No, it's all like very ordinary and drab. Like it's a very cheap looking movie for something that supposedly cost $200 million. Like I'm baffled where that money went.
Yeah, me too. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense at all. And especially now with the movie, apparently with its proceeds bombing, they're saying it might lose up to $150 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
When Arthur shows up in court, he does the Nixon peace sign thing for some reason. Then they say this all the time in the movie. I know it's a song, but they talk about building a mountain from a molehill or whatever, and I'm like, what do they even mean by that?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for that to be like explained later or something, or it to tie into something, but no. And I really hated the fact that he just renounces his Joker persona and just says, "Oh, I'm not really the Joker. I'm just some guy." At the end, I was thinking this movie was going to build up to him like really embracing the madness and telling the whole court to fuck off in a way, like saying, "Well, how you're all a joke, how your courtroom's a joke. Who are you to judge me? This or that." I was hoping for something big speech. Instead, he just goes up there and just says, "Nah, I'm not the Joker," or do whatever.
Well, the thing is that he had never been in love before, so he was totally obsessed with Harley Quinn, right? And when he found out that she was lying to him, he kind of lost his faith in her or whatever. He gets all depressed because then they have a fantasy scene where she stabs him in the stomach, right?
Yeah. Well, shoots him in the stomach, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's just like, you're not focusing on me anymore. You know, you're making it all about you. And that's what she was doing in real life, right? With the trial.
Right.
But at one point, Harley Quinn says, we're singing for them, and kind of looks at the camera. And I'm like, no one asked for the singing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not
Well,
singing for the audience.
it makes even less sense when you consider that whole scene's obviously just like a vision in the character's head. So who singing for them? What did that even mean?
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, they wanted this. It's like, no, we didn't. And then
If it was talking to the audience, they definitely misread the audience.
and then there's another scene where Arthur says to Harley Quinn, he goes, did you really think that movie about me was any good? And I'm thinking, I'm like, is he talking to the audience right now?
Yeah, and that's another thing. The idea that that in universe they would have made a TV movie about a series of murders like a year after that they happened. I'm like, what universe would that be the case? There are a lot of murders that went on in the 80s. I don't recall any TV movies coming out like right after.
And also, they let her in his cell to bring him makeup. Like, that doesn't make sense.
No, not at all. Hence why I was wondering whether she was even really there or whether this was like a vision. And I still don't even know. For example, she once says that she's pregnant. Was that true or was that a lie or was that a vision? I don't know.
No, that was a lie because he was starting to question her about other stuff and she wanted to change the subject and make sure that he would stay involved in her life. So she's like, I'm pregnant. Because everything she said was a lie. So you can't believe anything she says. Like,
yeah. And then he like goes back to the stairwell, which is kind of the most iconic, best piece of iconography from the original movie. And there he gets dumped by her, and then gets killed right after. Him getting stabbed by the quote unquote real Joker in a better movie actually would have been a very good ending. But if he had like embraced the madness and really like ginned it up, but in the end got killed, it could have had like a really tragic message, that you start like a cycle of insanity and violence. It can continue, it could consume you, it could lead to your own destruction. That could have been a really good ending. But instead, they have him for some reason like say, "Oh, I'm not the Joker," and like leave behind that whole persona, then get dumped, and then just have him get killed randomly. It just felt completely wasted and completely pointless.
it was just a fuck you to everybody that liked the first movie. That's all.
That's really all it was. This movie felt like an absolute middle finger. It's strange that they spent apparently like $200 million just to like spite people who liked the previous movie for some reason, but liked it wrong or something. I don't know. I'm baffled with his existence.
Joker also wore a white suit in Dark Knight Returns or whatever, the comic book. So that's why they did that. But then like it just didn't the ending of it just happened so quickly and so weird, and it's just like, yeah, I get it that the guards set him up to be stabbed, right? Obviously. Because they're like, oh, you got a visitor or whatever, and then they sent him down there, and he's like,
and this other guy who stabbed him, it kind of comes off. He's like seen like a couple moments previous in the movie, but if he had been like developed as a character, he had been somebody who like seemed to admire him and seemed to take after him, and then at the end stab him randomly. That actually would have also worked, but you don't really get much of this real Joker as a character.
It wasn't that random though, because he said, I used to watch you on TV, and he was basically like disappointed in what the Joker did, so he's like, screw you,
Right. But yeah, but that wasn't the way that they should have done it. They should have like, if this guy wanted to take the Joker's mantle, he should have like admired everything he did. So I'm gonna take what you did, but I'm gonna do it better, which makes sense because the Arthur Fleck version of the Joker, he's never really like a supervillain. Like he's never a criminal mastermind that looks like he could fight Batman. If Batman ever showed up, the movie would have been over in 2 minutes.
Well,
Like,
Batman was 10 years old, so
right, but if he wasn't 10 years old, if he were like a full-fledged, fully trained Batman, he would have pretty much like stopped the guy in an instant. He's not Heath Ledger's Joker, who's like this criminal mastermind who has plans within plans that and has like this whole elaborate plot to sow chaos. That was never Arthur Fleck's character. It was much more realistic. It was in terms of like a mentally ill person who resorts to violence. It felt like a real story of that could happen in the real world.
And it's weird to me that they didn't bring Thomas Wayne to the stand. Like,
yeah, that could have been an interesting. Well, Thomas Wayne's dead.
oh yeah, that's right. Not Thomas Wayne. What's the Alfred or whatever? No.
Oh yeah.
But I was like, but yeah. So he confronted him in the bathroom and then whatever. But like, the other guy saw him at the gates too and whatever. And it's like, the people they brought in, it's silly. Like, there's no cops interviewed. There's no anything. There's just like, and then they didn't know about his mom, but he still confessed to it anyway. Like, what? That doesn't make sense.
I didn't mind that because he's probably like at this point, I'm going to get found guilty anyway, so might as well confess it all. It was probably his attitude. Like, who cares? And
then when he becomes his own lawyer, he puts on this like New Orleans accent or whatever.
Yeah.
Like he's in To Kill a Mockingbird or something. And that accent was just really weird. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, like I feel like the basic plot of this movie, if it were executed differently, if it had not been a musical, and if it ended with him like further embracing the persona and like chastising the court, it could have led to something or some good from this movie's existence, but the end result is just a complete clusterfuck. It was I'll say that if you're going to make a movie that's very dark and depressing, you have to be good, more so than that. Like some people said it's worse than Madam Web, and I kind of agree because Madam Web was an awful movie, but it was kind of funny bad. Like some of the lines were so terrible, I was kind of chuckling at them. Whereas this, nothing was even laughably bad. It was just miserable, dark, cruel, and spiteful, but ultimately didn't lead to anywhere or mean anything.
Other than when the reporter goes, and what was happening? And Arthur goes, well, what was going on? And like, oh my God. And the guy, by the way, the guy who's doing the interviews, right, in Joker.
Yeah.
The reporter, he plays Alan, what's his name? He's a comedian. And his TV show, he plays this fictional reporter guy, this fictional radio broadcaster, and Steve Coogan. Not Steve Coogan. Steve Coogan's the other guy. I was thinking of who am I looking for? Yeah, it was Steve Coogan, yeah. Alan Partridge, that's it. So if you ever seen Steve Coogan's Alan Partridge character, it's kind of hilarious to watch him in this serious role,
I didn't get it myself.
And Brendan Gleeson is a good actor. He played the main guard or whatever. And but I just don't get why, like, at one point you could tell that the guard brought Arthur to music class just because he wanted to sing. You notice that? He's like, hopefully they'll let me sing, and then he's in there like singing his heart out while Arthur's like flirting with Harley Quinn or whatever.
I wonder if like this movie being a musical was something Joaquin Phoenix just demanded for the hell of it.
I wonder whose idea it was. Because yeah, they announced early on that it was going to be a musical, so I wonder, like,
yeah, I'm also wondering if the entirety of Ridley Scott's Napoleon was actually just a fantasy by Joker. Like he imagined himself as Napoleon Bonaparte, and that was that movie.
It just says that Because he had a dream about his character on stage telling jokes and singing or whatever, that they're like, oh, we should make it a musical.
Yeah. You think you're so great because you have boats. You remember that one?
And it says that Phoenix was really enthusiastic about the musical part, so it was his fault.
I mean, he's laughing to the bank. He made $20 million off this shit, even though the studio looks like they're going to lose 100 something million.
Yep. Lady Gaga says that, well, it wasn't really a musical. They just used music for characters to express themselves. I'm like, okay, then why aren't the guards singing? Why aren't the other prisoners singing their own songs? Why aren't they all done? Like, why is it only him having fantasy sequences, you know?
It was a musical. It was a bad musical, but a musical nonetheless. There was a lot of long, boring musical sequences.
Like, it started to get interesting when Arthur's character in court started to be all emotional and was more angry and stuff. And it was better when he was like that. But most of the movie, he was this quiet, subdued, you know, because I guess, you know, he had the shit beat out of him and the way he was being treated in prison and everything. I guess it took a toll on him or something. And this movie, it kind of felt to me like his laughter thing was fake because it's all throughout the first movie, right? And you could see it happening uncontrollably where like he'll cough and stuff because he's laughing so hard. In this movie, it comes across like the whole laughing thing was totally bullshit. And it
Not necessarily. They bring up the whole like compulsive laughing thing in a couple portions.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem compulsive in this movie. That's what I'm saying.
It kind of did.
Like he's in the courtroom practicing. He's in the back of the car practicing his smile and laugh before he goes to court. So it was weird to see him doing that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I kind of noticed that. This movie is also like 20 minutes lengthier than the first movie as well, but it didn't seem like it added it could do anything except you could cut like half hour of crap from this movie easily.
Oh yeah, probably.
It dragged a lot, both in the boring musical numbers, and just a lot of really pointless scenes with the guards. Like having Joker get like violated, was that necessary? No. Well, no. It just felt very mean spirited.
Yeah. And I mean, what's really funny is like The Crow failed miserably, but like I think this movie did worse.
Relative to its budget, it probably will lose more money. Yes, probably won't lose as much money as Borderlands did.
And I haven't seen. They did a remake of Salem's Lot too. I haven't watched that yet, but all these stupid remakes that they keep doing, it's just so dumb. Like another Venom movie, no one asked for that one, and you don't see it advertised anywhere.
Yeah. Well, what's really awesome is the director of the original Crow was trolling the remake on Twitter. He said, "I originally called this movie a pointless cash grab, but turns out there wasn't much cash to grab."
Yeah. It just seemed like, I don't know. It didn't seem like a very good ending to the two movies or whatever. The story of Arthur Fleck. It just didn't seem like a very good ending.
No, this movie should not have been made. The first one was a fine ending. It worked fine as a standalone movie. Not just because a movie's successful doesn't mean a sequel. Titanic made $1 billion, but no one decided to make Titanic 2.
Well, they did, but it was bad.
Oh, you're talking about that animated one, Tentaclino? I don't know if that counts.
No, there was a movie called Titanic 2. It was really bad though.
I imagine like the ghost of Jack launches swears revenge on the surface world for leaving him to drown. So he like him and all the ghosts of the Titanic survivors launch war or something.
They created a new ship called the Titanic 2, and yeah.
People have done that as a joke.
But this time a tsunami throws an iceberg in front of the boat. And that's a 1.7. And Joker 2, I think it's a 3 point something.
Would I give it 2 out of 10 this movie? Maybe 3 out of 10 if I were generous, but I couldn't really give it any higher than that.
So IMDb says 5.3. Which is funny. And
like
I wonder,
I said, I found this movie more miserable to watch even than Madam Web.
Yeah, it's kind of too dark. At least the first one had some lighter moments in it.
I mean, the first one was also really, really dark, but it felt like the darkness had a point. It felt like it had a message about how society treats like abuse victims and outcasts. Because you sympathize with Fleck, even if obviously you don't agree with his criminal actions he takes later in the movie, but you can still kind of sympathize with where he's coming from.
Yeah, right now, Terrifier 3 is killing everything, even though look at the budget of that one compared to like the budget of these higher movies, or even Transformers 1.
Yeah,
it's not.
Transformers 1 seems to be underperforming, which is a shame because I thought it was pretty good. Well, it wasn't great, but it was pretty good.
Like Wild Robot is beating the Joker, which is silly to think about. I mean, it's a good movie, but they're totally different types of movies, you know?
Yeah, The Wild Robot was probably my favorite movie this year so far. I really love The Wild Robot.
Mine, I actually liked Long Legs, if you haven't seen that yet.
I didn't care for Long Legs. You like that one?
Well, just because I like when Nick Cage goes all weird and messed up.
But that's the thing about that movie. It tries to be like a dark and serious horror movie, but I was kind of laughing at a lot of scenes, particularly Nick Cage's ridiculous over-the-top performance.
He based that on his mom.
Really?
So, like Nick Cage is this character actor, right? So it takes you back to the fact that Joaquin Phoenix generally is good as a character actor, but like in this movie, yes, Dark Khan, Arthur gets stabbed at the end or whatever. He gets shanked.
Quote, real Joker. Yes.
Yeah, he gets shanked and the real Joker starts laughing. The real Joker comes up to him and says, "Do you want a joke?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, he said something like, "Oh, what happens when you watch someone on TV and lose all respect for them?" And then he's like, "I should give you what you deserve." And then he stabs him.
And then he cuts his face like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah. And it's
which again, as I said before, could have been a good ending to this, like him being stabbed by like the next generation by the real Joker. Could have been actually a good ending of how like the cycle of violence Arthur Fleck and literally starts kind of leads to like even more insanity in the future.
What they should have done.
Because of course, even if you sympathize with Arthur Fleck for being an abuse victim or being mentally ill, it still doesn't excuse his criminal actions, and they obviously are things that should be condemned.
And the thing is Todd Phillips has said how they wanted to make this totally different than the usual story of Marvel and Joker and whatever, but they still tried to tie it in there, and it's like they should have just gone a completely different direction, not worried about making references to the original, all that stuff. Like,
yeah, because none of them worked. Like I said, like bringing in Harvey Dent, for example, they just brought that because it's a name that's recognizable from Batman mythos, but it doesn't really fit in this story at all. So there really shouldn't have been there.
Well, yeah, it should have been like, I don't know, Arthur Dent's dad or something.
Yeah, it was a conceptually good ending for this movie, if not for the fact that that Arthur kind of like renounces his whole Joker role, just says, "Oh, I'm not really the Joker. I'm just Arthur Fleck," and then gets dumped right after. In an alternate movie where he had like embraced the madness and like gone on a rant to the courtroom explaining how you are not fit to judge me because your whole world is a joke. That's what a good version of this movie would have had. Would have had him giving like a monologue, kind of like the Joker and the Killing Joke, about how the whole world is a farce, how your courtroom is a farce, and what have you, and then escaped and kind of like gone and then got stabbed at the end would have actually been a good ending, but that's not what they did.
Yeah, they just seem to. It just seems like he really wanted to just kill this thing so that he couldn't be blamed for like incels like in the movie supposedly and all this stuff. And it's like the incel type of people who watched the movie and got that message from it are stupid because the whole message of the first movie was about how bad the mental health system is and how it fails people and like.
Well, I don't think anyone who watches the first movie would want to be like Arthur Fleck. There's nothing about him that you want to emulate. He, like I said, he's someone you can kind of sympathize with, but as an abuse victim. But he's a sad, mentally ill individual who makes up weird fantasies about women in his head. And that was another thing I didn't like about this movie. The end of the last one, the last scene with his neighbor, I forgot her name, the pretty the neighbor that he had that fantasy with. You kind of like see him in their apartment, and then it just cuts to him in the hallway, and you don't know whether he killed her or not. Well, this movie answers the question, so where you firmly know he didn't, and I preferred that be unanswered.
Yeah, it kind of would have been better. And like the producer of the Murray Franklin show who wrote the book, why was he on the stand? Why wasn't like, and what's with him? Like he kissed his lawyer like he kissed the sex expert in the first movie.
Right.
Just randomly. And the lawyer didn't even react. He kissed her and she was like, whatever.
Yeah, that was weird.
And then on the radio, they're like, and then he kissed his lawyer goodbye. And you're like, what? Why? And then, well, they had been trying to tell him the whole time to be like, don't go into courtroom and say you're the Joker. You need to say that, it's some other part of you and you blacked out when that happened or whatever. But the way he was being treated at Arkham Asylum, I don't think he could have lived out his sentence very well at Arkham because he was already being mistreated. And
yeah, well, the thing about not guilty by reason of insanity is it doesn't mean you get to walk off, and it basically just means you spend the rest of your life in a mental asylum.
Right, and it would have been Arkham Asylum, which is where he was being sexually assaulted and everything else.
Yeah, which you could argue is not much better. Yeah, it would have you avoid the death penalty, but it probably wouldn't live much longer being locked up in an asylum.
And then they're like, hey, Arthur, they want to kill you. How do you feel about that? And then he's like, I've never had someone to believe in, or whatever song that was. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. And then the guy says, yeah, Arthur, answer the question. So I wonder if that whole scene, he didn't really sing. He just did it in his head.
Yeah, what's in his head and what's not is kind of... Well, we know Arthur Fleck from the first movie is kind of an unreliable narrator. We're seeing everything from his perspective, but we know he's a mentally ill person who hallucinates or doesn't see things for how they really are. And that is carried over, but here it's just a lot more sloppy.
Yeah. Well, it is, and they could have done a lot more, and there's no action, there's no, it just, nothing really happens.
Yeah. It being a courtroom drama could have worked with better writing, but there's very few moments. I guess the only moment that had any real tension was the kind of the one where that the short guy who there comes, but and there is some tension because you don't know if Arthur's going to hurt this guy or what's going to happen. You can see the guy's terrified sitting there, but even then, very little is really done with it. Like a better movie he could have given a speech of how I used to care about you, Arthur. I was the only one who respected you, and you did this in front of me. What were you doing, or something? But not much is done.
Actually, that happened with Gary, where Gary got on the stand. It was like, you're the only one who didn't make fun of me, Arthur, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff.
Right? Yeah, part of it was there, but it could have been done. It could have been much better written. That whole scene.
And if they had cut out some of the musical numbers and had the jury deliberating or something,
yeah,
at least have one member of the jury be sympathetic to him or something.
Something in this movie. It felt like it's amazing. A 2-hour, 20-minute movie. How little happened in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just it's such a dull movie to watch. Dull, depressing. Ugh.
And they had to flash back to the original movie. They're like, remember this? Just in case you forgot.
Yep.
And it just, yeah, I don't. If you're gonna redo the whole Batman story and stuff, there's so much more stuff you could have done with it.
Yeah, but at least this mini Todd Phillips DC universe is dead, because we're definitely not going to get any continuations of this storyline now. And
well, I think that's part of it too. I don't think he wanted to make another one. He wanted to be done with it.
Well, if he wanted to be done with it, he should have just not made this movie. You know, he just said, my movie's one and done. I don't want a sequel to it, and that would have been it.
Yeah.
But of course, a movie that makes $1 billion has to get a sequel.
Yeah.
Number crunching morons at the studio would have probably made it without him if he had refused. So I guess he feels.
And you know why he must have chosen Lady Gaga because he worked with her on Star Is Born. Because he was the producer on Star Is Born, right? So.
Oh, he was. I didn't even know that. That makes sense.
He did Hangover Part 3. The original Hangover. Due date.
It's very similar to the Hangover, and the fact that the first Hangover was a really great comedy that was kind of a big unexpected hit, and everyone liked it. So the studio's like, we got to make sequels, a sequel to it. And both the sequels sucked, because the first Hangover really shouldn't have gotten a sequel, just like the first Joker should not have gotten a sequel.
Other than like War Dogs or whatever that movie was, I'm looking at the thing here. And he worked in that Limitless TV show, but even War Dogs was a comedy too. So almost every movie he's done, except for Star Is Born, has been a comedy. And it's like really weird to all of a sudden go, here you go. Here's this weird Joker DC thing.
Which is not a comedy. It's a very dark drama. And I thought he did a good job on the first one, though. So he does know what he's doing to some extent, unless somebody else behind the scenes was like pointing him in the right direction who didn't come back for this one. I don't know.
Yep. And I actually wrote down in my notes, I wrote down Lady Gaga fucking ugly.
Yeah, she's not a very pretty woman. But if you're Arthur Fleck and you've never had a woman before, she'd be more than good enough.
But like you listen to her, okay, it's the same style of music, okay. You listen to her in that Bruno Mars song, and she's really, really good, right? It's the same style of music, but then you listen to this, and you're like, did she sing poorly on purpose?
I don't think she's sang poorly. I just think the musical numbers themselves just weren't very good songs or good music. So her singing was generally fine.
Because like, I don't know, I wanted to hear like "Send in the Clowns" or something, you know,
something
from The Simpsons, you know.
I barely even remember, because I barely remember like the details on the musical numbers, because I was zoning out throughout most of them, because as I've said, they're fucking boring.
Yeah. And old. They're really old songs. There are a couple songs that I like, but the versions of the song that was there, like, and Lady Gaga made her recent album all about Harley Quinn too, so.
Supposedly the original ending to this movie was that it was going to be Harley who killed killed Arthur Fleck and like try to take on his mantle. And I got to say, as bad as the movie was, it could have been a lot worse, because that would have been a much worse ending than the one we got.
And they didn't even play like used to call me Love Cowboy. Used to call me Maurice. What's it called? The Joker, the actual song. They never played that one. They
yeah, that would have been fun. I remember Robot Chicken did a great riff on that when they did a great segment of with the Joker being sentenced to death. And I love that when the judges are revealing his name, he says he calls him Maurice P. Joker. Like that would be his name.
There is an original song called "Folie à Deux" by Lady Gaga, but
yeah, Mark Hamill actually returned to voice the Joker in Robot Chicken, which is so fucking awesome.
yeah, but people are kind of mad at him now, though.
Kind of justifiably so. Mark Hamill doesn't seem like a very good person, but he did a good job voicing the Joker. And him returning for the Robot Chicken segment was fucking hilarious. They did kind of like a parody of the Shawshank Redemption, where they have him pretend to like dig out of Arkham Asylum. Batman goes in there to search for him, and he's under there. Oh, it smells like Batman forever. And then the Joker, he realized that he did not escape Arkham Asylum, and he just kind of like used the opportunity with Batman in the pipes to take a shit on the massive shit on the toilet and shadow over Batman. I'm like, that's really fucking funny.
A lot of the songs too that they were singing were like gospel songs for some reason.
Right.
Because in this song, "I'm Gonna Build a Mountain," the next verse is, "I'm gonna build a daydream from a little hope. I'm gonna push that daydream up the slope." So it kind of makes sense to have that song in there, but the part they were singing didn't make sense.
Right.
But it's basically, you know, building a mountain to heaven or something like that. And I'm just looking at the music, and I'm like, I don't know any of the songs really. They did "Fly Me to the Moon." They did "Dancing in the Moonlight." To Love Somebody for Once in My Life. When You're Smiling, That's Entertainment. But they played like "When the Saints Go Marching In." They sang that song too much. And that's why that song in particular, because that song is literally about like celebrating someone's life after a funeral, you know. They're making another Lord of the Rings movie. I didn't know that.
Yeah, an animated one set 200 years before the movies, War of the Rohirrim.
Well, if they stay true to the story, then it might be okay. But
it might be. It looks pretty interesting. It's supposedly a U.S.-Japanese co-production.
Yep.
So it's kind of an anime. It has kind of an anime-ish look to it.
Because that last attempt at Lord of the Rings, oh my god.
Well, yeah, it has nothing to do with Rings of Power. Peter Jackson is producing it, this new one.
Nice.
So I think it'll be pretty good. I hope anyway. We'll probably be doing a review stream of that one in a couple months.
Like I kind of miss like movies from the 90s because there's more original content, you know.
Yeah.
Because now it's just sequel after sequel after sequel. It's like, oh, stop it.
I mean, we got the Wild Robot this year. That was great.
I haven't even watched the whole thing yet.
You should go out and see the Wild Robot. It really is a great movie.
I did. I started to watch that Monsters TV show, the Menendez story one, but like, oh my god, it's so awful.
Yeah, I believe it.
But what happened is because of that TV show, apparently the Menendez brothers are getting another hearing to talk about their sexual abuse or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that should be interesting.
Yep.
I have to see what happens with that because, and then like Penguin, I haven't managed to watch yet, but
I haven't managed to watch it either. I've been meaning to find time.
The makeup's incredible, and I just.
Oh yeah. Colin Farrell actually. When I heard that Colin Farrell was playing Penguin, I'm like, what the fuck? That doesn't make any sense. But the makeup they did on him, he's just unrecognizable.
Yep.
So I do got to give them props, and I've heard good reviews about it. And I know it's in the same universe as the Batman.
Yeah, all dark and gloomy and all that.
The Batman was one I was a bit mixed on. I thought like the first 2/3 were really good, but I thought the ending like didn't really like pay off the way it could have.
Yeah.
At least though it looked its fucking budget. That one cost $180 million and actually looked like a movie that cost that much. This supposedly cost $200 million and it looks like a TV movie from the early 2000s.
Yeah, and it's like, was it more expensive to make it look old, or was it like a I don't know. I don't know where the budget went. Warner Brothers should be asking him that.
Yeah, the first one cost $55 million. If anything, it has like more different varied environments. If anything, that one should have cost more than the second one. Like, there's no reason this movie should have cost even half what it costs.
Okay, so it says here that Joaquin Phoenix got 20 million, she got 12 million, so that's 32. Expanded sets, special effects, and crew expenses, but like there wasn't really any there.
Yeah. I mean, I could see maybe 100 million, but 200 million, it's a joke. I guess maybe the biggest joke in the Joker movie is this movie's budget.
Yeah, like even for example, I know it's gory and horrible, and people kind of hate it because it's so brutal. But look at the budget for Terrifier compared to
Yeah, you can make a gory movie with a limited budget. Lots of filmmakers have.
Yep.
The first Evil Dead was made for less than $500,000. Even adjusted to inflation, like $2 million, 100 times less than this movie.
Yeah. Like it just.
Yeah,
like everyone had said though,
$200 million was a money laundering scheme. Probably, I can't think of anywhere else anything else that justifies this movie's expenditure.
Yeah, it just seems like people are saying in the reviews and stuff that it almost looks like he was purposely trying to antagonize the people who liked it and was just like, you shouldn't like this kind of movie or whatever. Something like that.
Why would you make a movie if you didn't like the people enjoyed it? Why would you make a protagonist who's like clearly does have issues that people could sympathize with if you didn't want people to sympathize with him?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like no one sympathized at all with the Heath Ledger's Joker, even though he might have been a victim of abuse, because you're never given a reason to sympathize with him throughout the whole movie. He's completely a psychopathic monster. But Arthur Fleck Joker is very different. He's someone who's kind of just a very sad, lonely figure who just kind of spirals out of control.
Yep. And yeah, I'm just trying to find out. I'm looking up stuff right now to find out like if there's anyone saying exactly where the money went, but like it's just as a sequel, it's bad, and like even as its own movie, like you can watch Joker 1 as a standalone movie. You can't really watch the new one as a standalone.
No, it doesn't work at all as a standalone movie because it does nothing. It references the first movie constantly. So
the only movie that disappointed me as much as Joker is Trap. Trap was that M. Night Shyamalan one that they've been pushing for a while with Josh Hartnett as like the dad character.
I haven't seen it. I pretty much avoid M. Night Shyamalan movies like The Plague.
So basically, it's a guy that he goes to a concert with his daughter, and they're setting a trap at the concert for the serial killer or whatever.
Right.
And you can pretty much figure out at the beginning of the movie who the serial killer is.
What a twist!
Well, the twist was really stupid. I can give it away since we're talking about movies and stuff and you don't plan on seeing it. Spoiler alert. But in that movie, basically, the dad turns out to be the serial killer, and the twist is that at the end they end up getting him and arresting him at his house with his wife or whatever because she was in on it.
Right, or we could do like what The Happening did with a twist. The twist is there is no twist. The trees did it, and then it ends.
Well, he like lied to the staff and told them that his daughter had cancer so they could get backstage, and like it was this, and the pop star was in on it the whole time too. She was involved in catching the guy.
Really, only the first two M. Night Shyamalan movies, like Unbreakable and Sixth Sense, actually a good twist at the end. After that, it just went to shit. Like Signs, the twist was fucking stupid. Aliens are killed by water. Aliens that are killed by water attack a planet that's covered in water.
Yeah, but then you had that beach one where they're all turning old really fast. It was really bad.
Stop letting M. Night Shyamalan make movies for the love of Christ.
Yeah.
Giving M. Night Shyamalan a movie camera is like giving a loaded gun to a chimpanzee. No good can come of it.
Yeah. Well, just imagine if they had done like if Scorsese had gone like, I'm gonna make Taxi Driver 2, like, you know.
Yeah, it probably would have sucked.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this movie did.
And that's why they didn't do a sequel to like King of Comedy either, because it made sense as a solo movie. It was good by itself. Like,
yeah, but did Taxi Driver make anything close to $1 billion? Even in 1970s dollars, what would that be? Like 200 million? Probably not.
No. It probably made a lot of money though, but I can't remember. But like this Joker movie better not be anywhere near the fucking Oscars, you know?
Oh, it won't be. It's getting killed by critics. The audience hates it. Yeah, there ain't going to be no Oscars from this.
So it would have only earned 120 million in today's dollars for Taxi Driver.
Well, that's adjusted to inflation?
Yeah, 120 million.
Yeah, so that's nowhere close to what Joker made.
Yeah, but that movie also only had a $2 million budget. Like, that was crazy.
So it made money, but it wasn't like it didn't like ignite the box office like Joker.
No,
did.
and De Niro only got like 30 grand for that movie. So it's like it's unbelievable how much budgets have gone up because of people's salaries and stuff. It's like nobody needs fucking billions of dollars or whatever. Like, some of these guys have so much money that like it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So Joaquin Phoenix, you're a good actor in some roles, but you weren't worth $20 million for this movie.
No, it's good in like think about like Her or
Her was good.
Gladiator or whatever, like a whole bunch of movies where he was in. Even Signs, he was decent. He was okay. He wasn't great, but Meryl, swing away, Meryl.
And again, in Napoleon, he was absolutely terrible. His performance was complete trash.
Yeah, but that's not all his fault. That's a lot of
No,
that.
it's more Ridley Scott's fault than his.
Because like
honestly, it was fucking idiotic that they have a 49-year-old Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon during scenes when real Napoleon would have been 25.
Yeah.
It takes place over like 30 years, but he looks the same throughout the whole movie. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Why didn't they just like what they should have done was what Lincoln, the 2015 Lincoln movie did, where instead of doing a biopic of his whole life, they just kind of set the whole movie in his last years. If that might have been able to work with Joaquin Phoenix if he had played the character better, but having him play Napoleon as a young man is just ridiculous at his age.
Yep. And also in the movie, like, good thing the studio wasn't like, you got to get rid of smoking in the movie, because that was a main thing with the Joker. Every time he got stressed, he would take a big, giant puff on a cigarette.
Well, it's an R-rated movie, so they can get away with that. It's kind of silly that that now like smoking in your movie can get you an R rating. There was I remember a joke from 20 years ago. Is this guy at this like at this porno shop where he's renting porno videos? He's like, "Why the hell was this movie here? It's just a romantic movie where they only make love one time and they didn't show anything." And the guy at the counter's like, "What? Yeah, but they smoked after."
And they also didn't explain where it was like this tell a joke, get a cigarette, like bullshit thing that they had going on. Like if he wanted a cigarette, he had to tell a joke, and that was the thing. And it was just like,
because he's the Joker. He tells jokes.
yeah, apparently. But also, you have to keep in mind that they never once called him the Joker. He was just called Joker.
Right. Which is like, because of course he can't be the guy that fights Batman because he's not equipped for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another example of a remake was the it's similar to this where they put musical numbers in there and stuff, where it was like, which was the Mean Girls remake.
I haven't actually watched that one.
Oh, it's just really bad, and it's just like a lame attempt to cash in on the first movie, and that's what the Joker seems like it was too. Just an attempt to make a cash grab, but it just failed miserably.
Oh yeah. Well, it turns out there wasn't much cash to grab.
Yeah, it's just
and just because the first one made over $1 billion does not guarantee the second one's going to be a hit. Far from it. Marvel learned that lesson the hard way with the Marvels last year.
Yeah.
But this one's even like more embarrassing than that. That one failed because the first Captain Marvel's was only a success because any Marvel movie released before Endgame was going to be a success, just because of the hype over Endgame and the fact that they sold it as essential material. That was marketing a brilliant way of selling a very mediocre movie. And without that that kind of marketing, when the movie had to stand on its own, it flopped. Whereas with Joker, the first one did definitely was a hit on its own merits, not because it was connected to any other movie. So this one failed spectacularly, purely also on its own merits.
Yeah. I'm just, and like, I wish they would have like shown a clip from the movie that they made about the movie or whatever.
Yeah, the in-universe TV movie about him, which doesn't make sense because no network would air such a movie. Everyone would say it's in bad taste.
And that quickly, when it's like not even a year.
Yeah, before the perp's even been on trial. I mean, I know there are movies or TV series that are based on real serial killers, but they usually don't come out till like a while after the guy's dead, like the recent Dahmer series Netflix did, or I think there was a movie, a Ted Bundy biopic that came out shortly after Bundy was executed.
Yeah.
So those kind of movies get made. One, they wouldn't just be a regular television event. They're kind of like they would probably be a more like obscure thing, like maybe like HBO or some like premium network that would like air more controversial content that's not safe for advertisers.
Yep. And of
I think
course,
I saw part of the Bundy movie. It was made purely for shock value. All I remember is the creepy ending that has kids saying that they're Ted Bundy, which was a really creepy ending, but it was just kind of there for shock value.
Yeah, I love how they have to like add all the shit into these stories to make them even somewhat viable as a movie.
Yeah, because there's not really anything all that interesting about Ted Bundy. He was a psychopathic monster who killed some women. There's nothing really else to him.
Yep. Well, it's a shame that they canceled Mindhunters or whatever, because that was the only show with serial killers that seemed at least slightly interesting, you know?
I mean, you can like Hannibal Lecter, for example. I mean, he's an absolute monster. He's entirely fictional, but he's incredibly interesting. I mean, Anthony Hopkins' performance was magnificent and haunting.
The late great Hannibal Lecter. They're letting him into the country.
Yeah.
I made a video with that because I thought it was hilarious. But it's just like, yeah, I don't know. Hollywood's on a downturn right now, and it sucks because there used to be good movies, and now it's just like, eh. I just want original content. I don't care if it's a good movie or not. Just make something original. Just
I mean, originality isn't really that important of a thing. Like it's similar to like unpredictability. I mean, anyone can write a script movie that's unpredictable, but it doesn't make it good. If in the middle of Die Hard the characters have become Frosty the Snowman, that would
yeah,
definitely
but at
be
least the one thing you can say about Joker is that it wasn't woke.
no. I would not call this movie woke. I would call it. Well, actually, it kind of was because it's all about degrading your main male protagonist, and it seems spiteful against the men who liked the first one. So it kind of was woke.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, but that's just the only thing I can think of is that it seems like with this movie, just like when they made like the Matrix movie, where it was just like a fuck you to everybody and just being like,
Yeah, Hollywood. If you well, I can't say every movie that was made out of spite is going to be a failure because the original Shrek was a movie made purely to spite Disney, and it turned out to be a massive hit. So I guess spite does sell sometimes, but more often than not, it doesn't.
and the whole incel argument was started by the mainstream media anyway.
Yeah,
Like,
what was really disgusting about that is it seemed like people were trying to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. It seemed like they were saying that the movie theater is going to get shot up, and they seemed to be like telegraphing and hoping someone would, but thankfully no one did.
yeah, it's just crazy.
What What's really funny about that is the movie that fall of 2019 that actually did have an incident of violence wasn't Joker. It was actually Frozen 2, where there was some fight between some parents where some people got hurt.
Nice.
So yeah, it turned out to be Frozen 2 that inspired violence, not Joker.
Yeah, people are stupid. What can you say, right?
Yeah.
Like I heard that. Well, it's all the media promotion thing. Like for example, at Terrifier 3, they're like people were throwing up and had to leave and blah blah. But you heard the same things about like Blair Witch, and then you watch it and you're like, okay.
I mean, if you can't stomach a horror movie, why would you pay to go watch a horror movie?
Yeah, it's like watch the other two first so that you know what you're going into.
Yeah. I've never watched any of the Terrifier movies. Don't have any desire to, but like, I'm not going to buy a ticket to a horror movie and then be shocked. What? There's horror in a horror movie?
I can't do that much gore. Like I was watching like Wrong Turn or one of those movies, and a scene happened and I had to shut it off because I was like, no, this is just gore for gore's sake. It doesn't go with the story at all.
Mm. I mean, I do want like movies to be realistic. Sometimes violence can give a good sense of grit to the movie.
Yeah, as long as it makes sense. But like, almost nothing in this Joker movie seemed to be coherent. It didn't go together.
No, it wanted to be too many things. I wanted to do like it wanted to deconstruct the first movie. It was a failed deconstruction, plus a musical for some reason, and plus setting up something that obviously will lead nowhere because this Todd Phillips DC universe is over, so it leads nowhere.
Yeah, hopefully they don't call him back to make some other obscure DC related movie because DC has gone off on a long time. Like they make, but like there's so many other characters in the Rogues Gallery that they could use, right? But it's always freaking the Joker, the Joker, the Joker, like every time.
You know, if I were like James Gunn or DC, I'd be worried because DC's had so many flops in recent years that I'd be worried that the brand might be horribly damaged.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, Aquaman 2 was a flop mostly. It lost money. Shazam 2 was a complete flop.
yep. But that was the Rock. That was mostly the Rock's fault.
Yeah, pretty much. Black Adam being a failure, like, doomed that version of DC. Pretty much, that was it for like that whole thing. If that one had been a hit, we'd probably be living in a very different world now in terms of DC.
Yeah. And like, I think comic book movies in general are just because they have all these Marvel movies coming out, the next slate of them, and nobody knows who these people are. Like Craven, I guess, but like it just
Well, that one's actually not made by Marvel. That's like made by Sony.
yeah. And then you have well, they're doing Fantastic Four again and all this stuff, and like
I think this year the only one Marvel Studios made was Deadpool and Wolverine, and that one turned out to be a big hit. And it was decent, but it felt. I guess as I get older, I get more and more cynical about meta humor, and that's all that movie was.
yeah.
It's meta humor and fan service, and that's the whole movie.
Even back in like 2009, 2010, around there. Even then, movies were somewhat better, even though they had some of the woke shit in it. But like, you could have comedies that were absurd and offensive and whatever, and people laughed and had a good sense of humor about it. But now it's like people are looking to be offended constantly.
You know, Todd Phillips even said that back in 2019 that woke pearl clutching has made making comedies much more difficult, which is why he made a much darker movie. And I was thinking, hey, maybe Todd Phillips may be based, and he made this great movie. But after watching this, I'm like, yeah, maybe not.
Even a movie like Airplane, you couldn't even make today, you know?
Yeah, parody as a genre on the big screen is dead. It exists in like YouTube videos and South Park, but as big screen parody movies, they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, no, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, movies like Airplane, Naked Gun, A Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles. Yeah, we don't get movies like that anymore.
Well, no, I think if he was still around, though, I think he would try and make another movie.
Who? Brooks?
Yeah.
He's pretty much retired the last 25 years. The guy's not pushing 100.
That's what I mean. He's so old that he can't really make movies anymore.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, he's still kicking, you know, he's still breathing.
Yeah. But back then, people could realize that when they're making fun of something, usually you can look at who the target of it is. Like if they're making fun of racism as racism and not making fun of a victim, then it's different.
Yeah, Blazing Saddles is hilarious. The scene where they turn out the KKK members by saying, "Hey, where are all the white women at?"
Yeah,
that scene's funny as hell.
Yeah, well, that stuff you can't do anymore. And like in Airplane, where it was like I know how to speak jive, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's it. That also, yeah, it's funny.
There's someone on Twitter that's like, I showed Airplane to my kid and they didn't think it was funny, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a different age of movie, you know. You can't introduce it to like a 14-year-old and expect them to get it because they don't know who Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is. They don't know like a lot of the references.
Well, a lot of the references, yeah, but I mean, some of the jokes are pretty universal. Can you fly this plane? Surely you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
Yep.
Like that doesn't require any 80s references. It just kind of is a joke that's still funny. Just fun wordplay.
Yeah, and if you look at Leslie Nielsen or whatever, he was able to be serious and it was entertaining, and then he could be funny too. But like Joaquin Phoenix, like I don't know, I've never found him really funny. Like when you try and do that, it's just like eh. And but I don't take him that seriously in dramas either, really. So
right. Well, Yeah, I mean, he died like 10 years ago, didn't he?
Who?
Huh?
Who?
Leslie Nielsen?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's been dead for a while.
I know. Kind of all the classics.
Yeah, he was in a lot of good comedies.
But before he did comedy, he was in serious movies all the time. Like he was a
Yeah,
serious
I
actor.
remember he was in Forbidden Planet, which is one of the best science fiction movies of the 1950s.
Yep.
That's a really underrated gem. Forbidden Planet.
Yeah.
But at least we still have South Park, and hopefully will for a long time. They're still hilarious.
Yeah, but South Park, are they doing episodes again? Because I know for a long time it was just doing these hour-long specials or whatever, right?
They said they're skipping the remainder of the year, and they'll be back in 2025.
Because like I think they discovered that they got more viewership by doing these 1 hour specials or whatever.
Yeah, but the last one, The End of Obesity, actually was pretty good. It kind of like took on like Ozempic, and the scene where they have all these like cereal mascots running like a mafia to like promote body positivity in order to keep people fat and sell more sugar.
Well, you know what's funny with that South Park thing? Okay, so they make fun of Logan Paul, right? And then so Logan Paul goes along with the joke and recreates the commercial from South Park, right?
Uh-huh.
And is like arguing through the teeth that my product is not aimed at kids. We're not targeting kids. And then he makes Lunchly.
Yeah, they call the whole special South Park not suitable for children.
Yeah, and Logan argued that Prime was not targeted towards kids, and then they put it in Lunchly where it is targeted to kids. And apparently they were stupid, and they were using the reason why Lunchables uses cheese product and not real cheese is because after like 3 days, the Lunchly things are getting mold.
Damn.
And it's like, yeah, he argued that it wasn't for kids, and then it whatever, and then you see this dumb moron who crashed his car or whatever.
No.
So what's his name? You know the the one kid that goes around with his bodyguards and like instigate Jack Doherty.
Uh-huh.
So Jack Doherty is a streamer that gets this big black bodyguards, and then he goes out and instigates people. He'll go in public and say shit to them, and then they'll jump at him, and he'll hide behind his security guards, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, he's driving a $200,000 McLaren in the rain, speeding, looking at his phone the entire time, and then he hydroplanes and crashes the car, and afterwards he didn't get charged with reckless driving. He should have. But afterwards, he hands the camera to his buddy in the car and makes him film everything while he's bleeding from his head.
Sounds like he's a complete jackass.
And after the accident, he was just concerned about the car. He wasn't concerned about anything else. The paramedics were like, "Can you put the camera down so we can treat your friend?" And he's like, "Well, I got to make my money back somehow."
Wow. What a jackass.
And then kick banned him, and he went on Twitch begging for money. And the kids
would give him a dime.
His parents are rich. Like, that's what he comes from. And it's just like, he's just so arrogant and doesn't give a shit about anybody but himself. And it's just like, he's getting his comeuppance, but not enough, you know? He wasn't sure. And the only way a kid like that is going to learn that there's consequences is if he's held to account.
Right.
And the only thing he cares about, his money. So put him in jail and set his bail really high so he has to spend all his money.
I agree.
You know, and
Yeah,
it's just like,
that's reckless driving. So that's normal offense for us plebs.
Yep, but the cops didn't even investigate, even though it's all on camera. Like, it's so stupid.
Wow.
And he's looking at his phone and he's joking and he says, I'm going to crash this car. Just joking. And then he did. So.
Fucking wow.
And then he defended himself afterwards like it wasn't on film. And he's like, no, I hydroplaned. You saw what happened. I wasn't even driving that fast. He was going over 70 when it hydroplaned, so
What was the speed limit in there?
I don't know. But when it's in the rain and you're in a rear drive vehicle, like a McLaren, you definitely shouldn't be speeding on the highway in wet conditions. Because those cars don't have any grip. They suck. There's no traction.
Right.
And then he grabbed his keys to his other sports car and he was going to do it again. And I'm like, dude, you're such a dick. Like, you know, the people who work hard and try and make a good living, and you know, we get shit on. So
that's the world, man. I thought the world was a tragedy. Now I see it's a comedy.
yeah, we all get what we fucking deserve.
You get what you fucking deserve.
Yeah.
That's why Arthur Fleck went insane in the first movie.
Yeah, it's like if you're beaten down constantly, eventually you're gonna flip. And like part of it too, though, if in the first movie the psych people hadn't let him down and taken away his medication, he might have been fine.
Yeah. They if he's not getting support he needs, and obviously he's mentally ill, what could happen?
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what time frame it is, but I think it's like the 50s or something. But
no, it's the first Joker is officially set in 1981.
Is it?
Yeah,
because the cameras and stuff
2 years later, so it would be 1983.
Because the camera equipment definitely was not camera equipment from the 80s in that courtroom. Like,
yeah, it was mostly videotape cameras. That's what they used in the 80s.
I know, but when they showed it on the camera, it looked really old. It didn't.
That's what they mostly used in the 80s.
I guess.
If you watch like courtroom proceedings from the 80s, it's mostly soft videotape.
Yeah.
They didn't have high definition cameras back then.
I was thinking when I was watching it, though, how much the judge looks like Scorsese. And Scorsese had those lines that he made about not liking comic book movies, and then the Joker hits the judge in the head with a giant mallet, you know?
Yeah, but that was like a vision.
I know, but was that supposed to reference like the mallet that Harley Quinn had in the comics? I don't know.
Right.
And that whole fantasy scene in the courtroom where he's shooting everybody, that was the only somewhat entertaining bit in the whole movie.
Yeah. Pretty much. All right.
It didn't even happen, so.
Oh, shit. Well, I'm going to winding down. Thank you for joining me today, Chair.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep. Well, I'd say don't go see Joker 2, but still have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.